What's up, guys? This is Ian here, coach of your Ladner Lantern, bringing you guys kind of an exclusive video. This is not part of a series. This is just sort of a one-off discussing how the season has gone so far up to the halfway point. So we're now completed week 6, which is the halfway point of the season. There are 12 weeks in the regular season, and we're halfway done. So congrats to all of the coaches for sticking around and making it halfway through the season. It's an improvement over last season where we had 2 coaches drop before before week 4, I believe, actually. So this is kind of cool, and I guess let's hop right into things. So this is the standings as of week 6 in each division. We have Phil and the Wiltshire War Turtles at 4-2 plus 10 differential with 2 conference wins. Keep in mind, conference wins are a tiebreaker, and I'll sort of talk about that right now, I guess. So the tiebreakers in terms of standings, the playoff seeding rules. Division winners will automatically make playoffs. So you see the top team in every division; those are all guaranteed into playoffs at the moment. Then the next best 2 records from each conference will take the final 2 playoff spots, which we will talk about in the next slide. 8 teams make playoffs out of 12. I know it's not great, but it sort of leads to better. I think it's more fun when more people make playoffs personally. So that's just how I run it. And then the last rule is that placing is determined based on number of wins first, then differential, which is how these ties are broken, and then conference wins, and then head-to-head record. If you happen to play twice, then there could potentially be a tie, and a tiebreaker match would occur because week 12 is randomized. It's teams do play another team twice. Um, this season, no one plays anyone twice that's in their division, I believe. Um, I could be completely wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure nobody plays anyone else in their division, so I don't think a tiebreaker would have to occur, but it's entirely possible that it might. We'll sort of see how it goes. So yeah, Phil's at the top of the Little Division. Daniel is in second, 3-3 minus 10 differential with 2 conference wins. Those conference wins are going to be huge, especially because he took down the UNC Wingles. And Jay, who's 1-5 minus 11 with 0 conference wins. There are only 2 people with 0 conference wins, Jay and Magic. Both have 0 conference wins. Excuse me. They're also both bottom of the table. Um, in the Twin Leaf division, Cade and the Krabby Dabbies are 4-2 plus 4 with 2 conference wins. Both of those conference wins being against his division, so he's in a very solid spot heading into the rest of the season with a 3-game lead halfway through the season, and both beating both of his divisional opponents. That's really strong for the head-to-head record tiebreaker. Detroit Terribolts and Nacho 1-5 minus 9. Not a great start to the season with 1 conference win. Magic and the Snow Point City Blizzard going 0-6 minus 21 with 0 conference wins. Not great. One thing that Nacho does have going for him is that he does hold the tiebreaker over Magic, and he is a very significant differential lead over Magic for second place in that division, so it's probably likely that he's not going to finish last in the division. In the Old Ale division, Dom and the Cleveland Nats Cavaliers 3-3 plus 5 with 2 conference wins. Jed and the Adelaide Overheat 3-3 plus 2 with 1 conference win, and Matt and the Green Bay Glass Pods 3-3 plus 0 with 2 conference wins. This is the division to look at, folks. The Old Ale division is insanely tight right now, and we'll talk about how tight the Sandjam division is afterwards. But the Old Ale division is crazy tight right now. All 3 of these teams are really solid. All 3 of them, honestly, in my mind, have experienced some upset losses and have won against mostly the people that they were expected to win against so far. So this is all middle of the pack. All 3 of them are currently sitting in a playoff position right now. So it is up to Daniel and the Seattle Raptors to sort of overthrow one of them and throw this division into even more chaos, because there's a 4-way tie in the Hoenn Conference that's broken by differential at the moment. There are 4 teams that are 3-3 in that conference, and it's extremely dangerous. That is going to be the division to look at for what now? For the second half of the season. I think it's highly likely that there won't be any clinching scenarios for these teams until probably the final 2 weeks. I think if I was to predict a team that's going to clinch the earliest, it's going to be the Krabby Cabbies and Cade, just because he's got such a huge lead on his division that he might be able to clinch by, say, week 8 or week 9, depending on how many wins he can pick up in the next couple of weeks and how many losses the Detroit Terravolts and the Snowpoint City Blizzard experience in that time. We'll sort of see how that goes. I do have faith that Nacho can pull his season back. I don't necessarily have the faith that Magic can pull his season back, and that's not based on him as a player. That I think that's mostly based on his team, and I'll talk about that more when we get to his team slide. Then in the Sand Gem division, you got me and the Ladder Lantern at 5-1 plus 16. We're actually first in the entire league with a really good record. And then 2 conference wins. I defeated Nacho and Austin so far. I still have 2 more conference games to play. And I lost to Ben, who has 3 conference wins, and he's 5-1 plus 11. His loss is an out of conference game, so Ben can still hit 5 conference wins this season. He still has to play. Who does he still have to play? I'm pretty sure he still has to play Austin, and I want to say he still has to play Nacho as well. I'm not entirely sure on that one. And then Austin sitting there at 4-2 plus 3 with 2 conference wins, also sitting in a playoff position currently, which is really cool. So everyone in the Old Ale division and everyone in the Sand Gem division hold playoff positions, and then the first place teams in Little Root and Twin Leaf hold their respective divisional playoff positions, but no one else from those conferences or from those divisions have secured playoff spots. So looking at the overall standings here, you see that the way the playoffs work, I'll sort of break it down a little bit. I hide the playoff bracket, so you'd have to watch this video to know what the matchups are going to be, because I try and do this so that no one can throw their last games to get a better spot. But if you're watching this and you're hearing this, then you might remember this for later. But currently we have the Little Root division winner playing Sinnoh Wildcard 2. So the Little Root leader right now is Wiltshire War Turtles, and the Sinnoh Wildcard 2 is actually the Atlanta Raptors. The Twin Leaf Division winner plays Hoenn Wildcard 2. Twin Leaf right now is Krabby Kadabbies, and the Hoenn Wildcard 2 is actually the Green Bay Glycepods. So we could have a rematch right now between Cade and Matt in the playoffs. They played in the semifinals last season, with Cade taking the win there and moving on to win the whole championship. Old Division winner plays Sinnoh Wildcard 1. So that at the moment, that is the Cleveland Nest Cavaliers playing against the Tampa Bay Weasels. And then the Sand Gem division winner plays Hoenn Wildcard 1, which is me currently playing against the Hoenn Wildcard 1, which is Jed and the Adelaide Overheat. So that'd be kind of cool. Yeah, so you can sort of see how it breaks down here. You got the division leaders in the Ladner Lantern, the Wiltshire War Turtles, the Cleveland Cavaliers, and the Krabby Kadabbies. So those are all set. And then the next highest are the wild cards. So in terms of Hoenn, number 3 and 4, Adelaide Overheat and Green Bay Glycepods are the wild card seeds, just because of how the division winners break down. And then in the Sinnoh Conference, because the Sand Gem division is so stacked, the Tampa Bay Weasels in number 2 are actually the wildcard 1, and the Atlanta Raptors in number 4 are wildcard 2. So Jed has been having a pretty decent season. He's been performing actually a little bit worse than he was last season, I believe. And maybe I'll just bring up the season 1 document so I can sort of touch on Coach's performance from last season as well. Something that I didn't think about until right now, to be completely honest with you, but I can sort of track how they were doing up to week 6 if I just go to their team page. So up to week 6, Jed. Yeah, so Jed was 4-2 last season up to week 6, with what is that? 6-3, 4-2 with a +6 differential last season, and now he is 3-3 with a +2 differential. So really, he's doing probably about maybe what he had expected between this season and last season. I think the last season was a lot more relaxing, and this season's a lot harder. So we'll sort of see how Jed can go throughout the rest of the season. His prediction of his performance was a positive record. Currently, he does have that 3-3 +2, although I think he was thinking more along the lines of 4-2 plus 2 or something like that. He predicted Tapu Koko, Halucha, Mega Sceptile, Kyurem Black, and Mega Charizard X to be the kill leaders, or any combination of those to be kill leaders, and he predicted Earthquake to be the top move kill. I think those are some fairly standard-ish predictions, and we'll be looking to see those later. In terms of transactions, Jed has used all of his free agent transactions, so he's only open to trades for the rest of the season. I think his team is still extremely scary, although he's dropped a lot of the of what may have made it even more scary earlier. The Infernape for the Tornadus Therian, so he has a better. I actually think it's a better Volt turn with the Tornadus plus the Mega Beedrill. I think having a faster Mon between Mega Beedrill and the Kartana was a very smart idea as well. And he actually has the Alolan Persian there and the Aerodactyl, so he's covered a lot of really fast speed tiers all the way down. Um, I don't know if he's got a base 100 actually, so pretty much it falls off after the Kartana down to the Kyurem, which is a little bit of an iffy scenario there. But I don't think he's doubled up on any speed tiers either, which is kind of cool. I could be wrong. No, I'm definitely right. Unless you count each Gorgas form separately, which I generally don't. I just sort of count the um, the medium form for statistical purposes. So he does have a ton of speed tiers covered. He doesn't have any huge weaknesses anymore. He's got a lot of hazard removal and quite a few hazard setters currently as well. I think he's going to make a run for it. Let's see, who's he still have to play? He still has to play Cade and Ben. Those are going to be really Cade, Ben, Dom, Austin and myself are his next 5 matches. So he's actually got a really hard end to the season. Losing to Jay in the UNC Wingles and Daniel in the Seattle Raptors were actually probably pretty big matches for him to lose because they were both below him in the standings, and those were really big wins to try and pick up because he's got 5 really hard matches ahead of him, and then he plays Nacho in the randomized Week 12 match, which he did win in the first match, so I do have confidence that he can pull out the W the second time around, especially with his team changes. I think he does have a little bit of a better matchup than he did the first time, and how close the first game was. I think the second game is going to be a little less close. Moving on to Austin, the Atlantis Raptors. Austin started out with a perfect 4-0 start in really close matches, and he's had some pretty close losses to end out his first 6 weeks. He's got a little bit of an easier schedule ahead of him. He plays the Seattle Raptors and UNC Wingles in the next 2 weeks, and then he plays Ben and the Tampa Bay Weasels, Jed and the Adelaide Overheat, which are reasonably difficult matches. And then he ends the season on the Detroit Terravolts and the Snow Point City Blizzard, 2 games which he should absolutely be able to win. So he does have, I would say, probably the easiest schedule heading into the last 6 weeks here. So he should be able to make a pretty serious run for a playoffs. I would maybe like to see him make some transactions with this team. He has made one so far. He ended up dropping Frogadier for Ferroseed, which I think was a really solid drop. I don't know if Gliscor is actually going to do anything for him this season. He's mainly been using it to set rocks. It's only come to 2 games in his first 6 games, and it was kind of a um, pivotal part of the team that he drafted. So I'm looking to maybe see if he changes some things up here to maybe make his team a little bit easier to use. Just because his games have been so close, it's been either a bad matchup um, or he's had some problems, finding the right builds to go with. And especially, I think that was shown in his game against Matt this past week in Week 6, where um, he didn't have anything for Thundurus Eye, but Matt didn't have anything for Victini, and they were sort of just like trading kills between Victini and Thundurus Eye the entire game. And I'd really like him to pick up maybe a better electric resist, which he really doesn't have, like, because an electric type can just sort of run Thunderbolt HP Ice right now and smack a lot of his team. Um, so I'd really like to see him pick up a better electric resist. Currently, it's Raikou because Gliscor is not eating HP Ices. So we'll look to see if that's going to be there in the future. Um, he's still sitting in a really solid spot. He's in the wildcard 2 spot. He's got a 3 game advantage over Nacho, so it's very likely, I think, especially if he ends up beating Nacho in week 11, that he is probably going to stay in the wildcard 2 spot. I don't necessarily see the Sinnoh Conference changing a lot in terms of who's going to be in playoffs. I could definitely see the Sangem division switching spots a bunch of times, potentially Austin even finishing first in that division based on how easy his end schedule is. And you could see something like me in Wildcard 2. I don't think that's anywhere out of the realm of possibility. Um, Austin predicted Mega Aerodactyl as a kill leader, so we'll sort of see how that goes. He also predicted Return as a top move kill, citing Mega Altaria and Mega Pinsir as really good return users. Both of them have been reasonably successful this season. In fact, Mega Altaria is on the kill leaderboard if you've watched Weekly Recap Week 6. Mega Pinsir is currently even at 3-3, so it's not really contesting for a kill leader. But it has been a very consistent Mon for my team, which is what he was citing with that. Austin is predicting his own performance. He was aiming for playoffs and an even record. Currently, he is at a positive record and he's in a playoff spot. So it looks like his predictions are probably going to pan out. It seems to be the season of Austin, honestly, over here, and I'm looking forward to seeing how he can keep moving forward this season. In terms of Dom and the Cleveland Cavaliers, the S Cavaliers, he was predicting a positive record. He currently is 3-3 plus 5 at an even record. He has lost some unfortunate matchups that I really did feel. Actually, just one that I really felt that he had the advantage in against Austin. I think that he had a strong matchup advantage and he took the L. Really close game, but he still took the loss, which is really what matters there. He ended up losing to Phil and Ben. Both of them are really strong opponents, and he's taken some big wins off of fairly weak opponents so far, actually. His wins are against people below him in the standings currently, and he's got a really difficult end to his season as well. Although he is taking on Magic this next week, he does have Cade, Jed, then myself, and then Matt, and then Daniel to finish out his season. And I know Daniel's going to be wanting revenge after he lost to Dom in week 1, so I would say Dom's got a pretty difficult end to his season coming up here. Although he should absolutely be able to beat Magic and take a win there, I'm not sure how successful he'll be throughout the end of the season. Dom has used 2 of his transactions. He ended up dropping Galvantula and Hitmonchan, and he picked up the Electrode and Crobat. I'm not sure if Linoon is the best on this team. I know it was a really good thought at the beginning, but I don't know how much Linoon's going to do for this team. I'd like to see him pick up maybe um, maybe a better option in terms of the Linoon. I also don't like the fact that Linoon shares the same speed tier as Mega Charizard X and Jirachi, so we'll see if he ends up wanting to change anything there. I think filling a speed tier in between Greninja and the base 100s is probably going to be pretty important for this team. Um, or having something slower than Tapu Bulu that can be a wall breaker, besides Armaldo, which can fill the role of a wall breaker potentially, but hasn't done so far this season. Dom predicted positive record. Again, he's going even at the moment. He predicted Mega Charizard X and Komao to be kill leaders. Mega Charizard X is a +3 differential, and Komao is where's Komao? Komao is 5-1 right now, so Komao could work its way up there. It's just currently not in a position to do that yet. Oh, I totally forgot to compare Austin's record with last season. So Austin has definitely improved over last season because as of week 6, Austin was 0-6. So that's pretty much all there is to it. Austin had a very poor season last season. He went 1-11 and only managed to pick a game off of Mortal. And this season, he's looking like it's going to be the season of Austin, and I'm excited to see how it's going to go. Now, in terms of Dom did not participate last season, so we have no data for that. But in the 2 seasons that I've seen Dom play, we're not counting UPBA season 2. That was not a full season; it was only 2 games. Dom did make quarterfinals in UPBA season 1, and he just made semifinals in the AABL season 4. So we're looking for Dom to pull off a playoff run here, as he hasn't missed playoffs yet. So that's something to look at there. In terms of Nacho, Nacho has been having a fairly dismal season up to this point. That's kind of what I would describe it as. I don't think Nacho's been performing up to his normal standards. I know Nacho to be a very creative team builder, and he's kind of just a reliable battler. He drafts a lot of balanced teams and then plays around balance really well. And he drafted a balanced team this time, but I think the core of Celesteela Toxapex isn't doing as much as it needs to do. Celesteela has come to every single game, but it hasn't been able to fill. I just feel like it needs to fill a more defensive role on this team, the way that he's built it, and unfortunately, that's not really what it's been able to do. It's died all six games, so it's not having a fantastic season. Toxpex has died in all 4 games that it was brought to, and it has 3 kills, mostly from just clicking Scald on a bunch of things. It's kind of sad that Toxpex has 3 kills at this stage of the season. I'm not super thrilled about that, but things like Chandelure have been reasonably underperforming for Nacho, but there's some bright spots in the um, I think in the Garchomp and the Pilliswine in particular have been real bright spots. Mega Diancie hasn't really been working out this season either. Nacho, his matchups, he still has Matt, Daniel, J, Ben, Austin to play, and then Jed in week 12. So he's gotten okay. He's got an okay end to his season. I don't necessarily. I see him maybe beating Jay out of those last teams, and putting up a fight against Austin and putting up a fight against Daniel, but I don't really think he's got the matchup against Ben or Matt, and I'm really scared to see how those games go. I also think Jed, he's going to be out for revenge against Jed for sure for beating him in week 1, so we could see another really close match there. Although I do think that Jed's matchup got a little bit better after his transactions. Nacho did make 1 transaction. He dropped Tangela for the Drampa. I'm actually kind of looking for him to make some transactions before the trade deadline. It's coming up in 2 weeks, by the way, the trade deadline. The end of week 8 is when rosters are finalized for the season, and I think that he's going to be looking to maybe make some changes here to improve his team and sort of improve on his record. In terms of last season, at this stage, Nacho was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So Nacho was 3-3 with a 9-11, 6, 3. So he was 3-3 plus 3 at this stage of the season. He actually didn't play all of the matches. I can't remember when he took over. I believe he took over in week 6, actually. So this would have been the first week that he took over the team. This was formerly Blade playing this roster, but he took over the team in week 6, I'm pretty sure, and picked up a really big win over Muddy in that week. And he went on to make playoffs with that team, finishing 6-6 with the team. He had a really busted team with Megalodios, Bulu with Halucha, Melodic, Nidoking. I mean, it was a strong team last season, and yeah, so we'll sort of see how Nacho performs for the rest of the season. I don't necessarily think he has the best shot at playoffs, mainly because he's 3 games behind Cade in their division, and he's also 3 games behind Austin, who is the last wildcard spot. His differential isn't great, and he's sort of on a little bit of a losing skid here. Picking up the win over Magic is important, but it's not the end all be all at this stage because he needs to start piling up wins really. Uh, I think he could actually be eliminated from playoff contention reasonably shortly. If Austin beats him in their head-to-head matchup and Nacho loses against 2 of his next 4 opponents, then there's a really good chance that Austin ends up knocking him out of playoff contention, and we could know all 4 of the playoff teams for Sinnoh really early. It would just be the order that changes up. I think that's actually probably really likely. It's a wildly different story in Hoenn where there's such a huge tie in the middle of the pack, and Phil, while safe at 4-2, is still only 1 game ahead of the pack right now. Nacho predicted Tapu Koko to be a kill leader, so we'll see how that goes. And he predicted Surf, Scald, and Moonblast to be top move kills, and we'll talk a little bit more about those at the end, near the end of this video. He predicted himself to go 7-5. He can still make that prediction if he wins all 6 of his next games. I don't see that being the most likely scenario. Again, I don't necessarily see Nacho making playoffs, unfortunately. Nacho's a very good friend of mine, and I have all the faith in the world in him, but just these matchups, and I know the caliber of these players, and I just don't think that he has a realistic shot at making playoffs. I do think he has a realistic shot at playing spoiler, especially for Jed in week 12. That could be a very pivotal matchup depending on how the Hoenn Conference goes. And I actually think his match against Daniel in the Seattle Raptors is super important for that reason as well. Same with his match against Matt. Any Hoenn Conference matches he plays are really important. I think his match against Ben and his match against Austin aren't very important, except in terms of playoff seeding for Sinnoh. I think those are actually his least important matches, and maybe his match against Jay isn't very important either. Matt in the Green Bay's Glycopods, he's in the tie for fourth, so or for second. Sorry, he's part of that tie right now, and he's not having the season that I expected of him, honestly. He's made two transactions, which I really loved. He dropped Skarmory for the Thundurus-Incarnate and Electros for the Registeel. He basically upgraded both of his picks in my mind, and I was a really big fan of those drops. I actually think they made his team so much better. There's a few things that I really don't like on his team still, though. Decidueye is the main one. I don't think Decidueye is doing anything on this team. It hasn't come to any games, and we could see him potentially dropping that. And Regice as his tier 5 pick, I think it's more likely that he's going to end up dropping Regice. Regice is doing absolutely nothing. The only thing it did was potentially do something against me in week 1 by setting up his own Veil against my Hail team, which it didn't. And I really don't think that Regice is going to come to any other games. I think it's completely worthless at this stage, and I'm looking for him to maybe make a transaction or two to make his team a little, just that little bit better to give himself the advantage in some of these matchups heading into the end of the season. He predicted playoffs. Currently, he's sitting in a playoff position, so that's looking really good for him. He predicted Mega Sceptile, Tapu Koko, Volcarona, Mega Sharpedo, and Mega Charizard X on the kill leaderboards. We'll see how those all play out. And he predicted Liquidation as the top move kill, which is surprisingly high, but is not quite up there yet. In terms of his record compared to last season, he is way below expectations from last season. Last season, he was 6-0 with an incredible differential at this point. What is that? 15, 21, 20, 6-0 with a plus 22 differential at this stage last season. And this season, he's 3-3 plus 0. So really looking for Matt to sort of step up and perform a little bit better than he has. He did have a lot less bulky of a team last season. Actually, looking at his roster, he had a fairly offensive team compared to what I remember it being. This team, he drafted a lot more bulk and is sort of relying more on Mega Sharpedo as an offensive answer, and he has been relying on Thundurus-Incarnate, which has worked out well for him, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. Volcarona hasn't been having the same showing that it did last season. I don't necessarily know if that's because it doesn't have the same support, because I think it does. I think it's just because there are less threats to prep for, and so Volcarona gets prepped for a lot harder than it would have last season. I think that's mainly the points that I wanted to talk about with Matt. He does have a lot of removal options for the Volcarona, which is really good. He's got some hazard setting-ish, and he'll be looking to bounce back and sort of pick up some more wins this season. Oh, strength of schedule. So he does have Nacho next week, which should be a win for him. He does also have Magic in week 9, which should be a win for him as well. He does still have to take on Phil, which is a really important match. He has to take on Cade, which is a kind of important match, more so just for his standings. And he has to take on Dom, which is another really important match. And then in week 12, he plays Ben in a rematch. He did lose a very close game against Ben in week 5, and so he'll be looking to pick up some revenge there. That could also matter for his playoff seeding in week 12. Cade and the Krabby Patties. Cade is having a decent season, honestly. He didn't really need to do too much this season compared to last season, just because of I do believe that his division is fairly weak at this stage. He predicted Zygarde 50%, Mega Pinsir, and Mega Sharpedo to be kill leaders. We'll see if that plays out. And he predicted Earthquake and Thunderbolt to be top move kills. We'll see if that plays out. He also predicted himself to be either 9-3 or 8-4 by the end of the season. I think both of those are very realistic. Looking at probably the 9-3 at this point. I think based on his matchups, 8-4 is also very very realistic based on his matchups coming into the end of the season as well. He had a pretty rough start, honestly. It may just be because his team wasn't functioning the way that he wanted it to, and it wasn't actually as good as we had all thought. Losing against Ben and Austin kind of cost him a lot, and picking up really close wins in weeks 1, 4, and 5, all being 1-0 victories, was probably fairly poor. He's brought it back a lot with his big win over Magic, a game that he actually needed to win with a lot of differential to sort of give himself some breathing room and some space. He's actually made all three of his transactions this season, dropping Lantern for Palisand, dropping Excadrill for Scizor, and dropping Gigalith for the Porygon 2. They make his team a little bit bulkier, which is great because otherwise it was pretty much just hyper offense at that point. And hyper offense is not going to win you big games. It's going to win you small wins because you're trading one for one so very often, or two for one every once in a while, right? In terms of his performance compared to last season he had Mega Shark, which was extremely scary, and he actually drafted pretty much the same way that he did last season, grabbing an undervalued Mega and drafting a bunch of tier ones, which I'm kind of against. Well, actually, no, you know what? It wasn't a bunch of tier ones just because Infernape was so under tiered last season, but um, he is bringing back the Porygon 2 that he had last season, and I just realized it's a lot bigger sprite than I had last season, so I'm just going to shrink it a little bit. Yeah, we'll see how his season plays out. He definitely still has a very hyper offensive team, but Porygon 2 can switch into thing. Porygon 2 Vaporeon is a really good defensive core. Just run defensive Vaporeon and especially defensive Porygon 2, and you can sort of wall a lot of teams. He's got a reasonably difficult season, but a fairly easy end to his season. He does play Jed this coming week, then Dom, then myself, then Matt. I think that's 4 tough weeks that he's going to potentially struggle against. Maybe pick up some losses there. He plays Daniel in week 11. Daniel is always unpredictable. That could be a very scary matchup for him. And then he has a rematch against Jay in week 12. He did beat Jay in week 1, and Jay is currently underperforming heavily, I should say, or just memeing with his sort of meme team. So that should be a win for him in week 12. He can clinch reasonably early depending on how many losses Nacho has, and then at that point he really doesn't have to care anymore once he clinches playoffs, because when he clinches playoffs he'll be clinching the division, so he'll already know his seed going into things, and the rest of the season really won't matter for him. He can take it easy in the last few weeks, I think, is probably what he'll end up doing. Myself and the Ladner Lantern, I have been having a really good season. I'm not going to lie. This has been a pretty decent season for me. Coming off of a very difficult season last season, this has been not, I wouldn't say that I've been breezing through the season, but I think I've been showing that I'm as good as I was last season this season. Um, I have kind of a rough end to my season, to be completely honest. What I've done well is that I've taken wins off of people that I should have in big fashion. So that's why we're sitting at 5-1 plus 16, is because we've been winning big against people we were supposed to win against, and that's really important. Losing to Ben may cost me in the end, because that was a divisional match, and it was really important that I won that game, and I didn't, unfortunately. And then losing or beating Austin was really important because he was a divisional opponent. I still have to play Phil next week, and then I have to play him in week 12. That's going to be really bad. It's also highly possible that I play Phil in the first round of playoffs, so I may have to play him 3 times this season. So those are going to be some crazy matches. I have to play Magic in week 8, which is another match that I need to win big. I have to play Cade in week 9. That's going to be a scary match. Dom and Jed in week 10 and 11, respectively. Both of them are going to be hungry, very hungry for playoff positions. I think it's entirely possible that I don't clinch based on my own merit, but I clinch playoffs based on um, Nacho and Magic losing enough games at this stage. I've currently made one transaction. I ended up dropping Barrel for Stunfisk, which I think actually helped the team quite a bit. I think it helped the synergy a lot, and it gave me an electric immunity, which I previously didn't have, and is very important for the Mega Pinsir and the Melodic. That ended up costing me in Ben's match, was sacking off Sunfisk and not having an electric immunity for the Gengar later, spamming Thunderbolt against me. In terms of my prediction, I predicted playoffs. I think that's very realistic at this stage of the season. 5-1 is really solid coming in. I predicted Mega Pinsir, Infernape, Mega Sharpedo, Mega Charizard X, Kyurem Black, and Manaphy to be kill leaders. We'll see if any of those are on the kill leaderboard. I also predicted Crunch and Dragonclaw, thinking that Mega Sharpedo would have a lot of kills with Crunch, and I thought that Dragonclaw was going to be a very common move for things like Mega Charizard X and Kyurem Black on the kill leaders. That's just sort of what I was thinking. So, in terms of my performance from last season I had a really stacked team of Volturn, and I actually pulled it off really well. I finished the season 10-2, and at this stage of the season, I was 4-2, having lost my first 2 weeks, but I was on a tear of a winning streak. I ended up going on a 12-game winning streak last season from week 3 until the semifinals of playoffs. Those were all of my wins, and then I ended up losing in the championship match to Cade. So we finished that season 12-3 total, if you include all the playoff games, and it was a really strong season for us. Celesteela was amazing for me. Mega Beedrill was amazing for me. Donphan ended up being amazing for me. Just crazy that I could use all of those mons so incredibly well last season. I just felt that it was so rewarding to be put in that position. Azumarill, another mon that just like blew through teams sometimes. So I was really happy with that. So this season I'm actually overperforming compared to last season because I'm 5-1 and not 4-2, and I'm really happy about that. I just want to make playoffs at this point. The record really doesn't matter anymore. After my such a successful season 1, I really don't care about having the best record anymore, but it is still going to be reasonably important to keep that up moving forward. The Seattle Raptors um, and Daniel, he predicted himself to have more than 2 wins. He's currently sitting at 3-3, so he has 3 wins. So Daniel has overachieved for his prediction of performance. That is fantastic. I believe he is the first person to overachieve already, and I think that means that Daniel is having a very successful season based on him overachieving already. He predicted Mega Sceptile, Alolan Sandslash, and Kyurem Black as kill leaders. We'll sort of see how that goes. Alolan Sandslash was kind of way out there, but I do have a Hail team, so Alolan Sandslash could put in work. He also predicted Earthquake as a top move kill, not way out there. That could potentially be the top move kill there. He sort of sniped Magic on the Rain Core, grabbing Mega Swampert, which sort of hurt Magic quite a bit in terms of his Mega choice. He has been really turning it up after a really poor first 3 weeks where he was 0-3 minus 14. He's pulled it back with 3 really close wins and honestly upsets at that against Jed and the Adelaide Overheat and Ben and the Tampa Bay Weasels. Those are big upsets, especially against Jed and the Adelaide Overheat because he's currently tied with him. He's in the 4-way tie with him right now at 3-3. He made some big drops. He ended up trading Zeraora to Magic for Jolteon, which I think was good. He ended up dropping Simisear for the... Oh crap, what did he drop Simisear for? For Xatu, which was big. He's very comfortable with Xatu, and he dropped it. He traded a Selgor for Sceptile, and then dropped Sceptile for Volcanion, using up the rest of his free points that he had. Especially because he traded away Zeraora for Jolteon, he got back a mound of free points and dropped it all on Volcanion, which he's extremely comfortable using. And Volcanion's picked up 7 kills in the 3 games that he's brought it. I'm stoked to see how he finishes out the season. In terms of underperforming, Zygarde 50% is 0-4 heading into week 7. I don't think that Zygarde was worth when he took it at this stage. I really don't. It's just not as good as it was at the beginning of Sun and Moon. I just don't really think Zygarde 50% is that good in Ultra Sun and Moon anymore. And Ditto has been overperforming for him, I think. And the Volcanion has been absolutely insane for him this season. I think Scolipede has also been an underperformer. If I was to point out something there, in terms of last season he drafted a Mono Dragon team, which was disgusting, and somehow he made playoffs with. But at this stage, he was 2-4, and then in the second half of the season, he managed to lose all 6 games to end the season out. But he was 2-4 at this stage last season, so he's overperformed from then, and now he's 3-3. Really good start for Daniel. I'm not looking to see him make any free agent transactions. I think his team is actually pretty solid where it is right now. Maybe the only thing would be dropping Zygarde for a better for a better dragon sitting in tier 1 potentially. I know Latios is still there. I think Latios would make this team really strong. I really believe that Latios would make this team really strong. He's actually missing out on ground immunities right now. He's only got the Xatu, and Volcanion, Jolteon, and Metagross do not like ground types. Scolipede doesn't like them either, really. So I think dropping Zygarde for Latios would benefit him quite a bit. He does have 1 transaction left, and I'm looking to see if he's going to make that drop. Hopefully, Daniel, if you're watching this, you consider this because I do think that it would improve your team greatly. In terms of Daniel's strength of schedule finishing off the season, he does have to take on Austin in week 7. That's going to be a difficult matchup. He takes on Nacho in week 8. That's a very winnable matchup for him. Phil in week 9, which he really has to win. Magic in week 10, which he needs to win absolutely needs to win Cade in week 11, which he may not have to win, and then he has to play Dom in a rematch in week 12. He did lose to Dom 4-0 in week 1. He'll be looking to get revenge with his much improved team there. I could see Daniel making playoffs. I really could. He's in that four-way tie, and he's a very unpredictable battler, and he's very skilled with Volcanion and Xatu. I'm looking to see him push forward and make that jump into the playoff standings. Magic in the Snow Point City Blizzard. Now, this is where I'm going to talk about this gimmick sort of thing. So, I've been potentially thinking about last place in the league getting first pick in season 3. We'll see if I stay with that idea, but from that standpoint, I really don't think Magic has any shot of making playoffs this season. It's just not in the cards for him, I don't think at all. Being 0-6 minus 21 at this stage, and he's 4 games down from wildcard position already. He's basically going to have to win all 6 of his last games. I could definitely see him maybe taking 2 games off of people to finish off the season, but I don't know if he's actually going to win all 6 of these. I think he's got some really tough matchups. He has to play Dom in week 7, myself in week 8, Matt in week 9. Those are 3 extremely difficult matchups. It's the Battle of the Rain in week 10 against Daniel, and he could pick up a win there. Against Jay, he definitely has a shot of picking up a win there. And then he has to rematch against Austin, who had a fantastic matchup against him in week 2, so I really don't see him winning there. He predicted playoffs. I don't see it in his future, unfortunately. Just the way that he drafted his team wasn't fantastic, and now that he traded Jolteon for Zeraora, it's maybe improved a little bit in terms of his speed tiers and stuff like that, but he really hasn't been using Lando a lot, which was his first overall pick. A really powerhouse mon in Draft League format. It's come to 1 game and it died in 6 weeks. Looking to see him use Lando more this season. I think that's pretty much what I'm thinking there. He's been bringing Quillfish to a ton of games, and Meloetta as well. Pelipper hasn't done anything. It's come to all 6 games and died 6 times. I'm really looking to him to sort of step up and maybe use his team in a different way than he has been this season. I don't know how I would say that. Maybe drop one of his rain sweepers. He hasn't really been bringing Kingdra, so maybe dropping Kingdra for something a little bit more powerful. He doesn't have a ton of type diversity on the team, so it's not very synergistic. He did predict Zeraora, Mega Sceptile, Mega Pinsir, Mimikyu, Mega Sharpedo, and Hawlucha to be kill leaders. And he predicted Liquidation like Matt to be a top move kill with the Quillfish. Quillfish is his team leader in kills, so that's maybe not far off the ball. Last season, he was 4-2 at this stage, and he went on to go 5-1 in the second half of the season. He had a much better team last season, I think, and Mega Gardevoir was just an absolute monster in season 1. So we'll sort of see if he can bring things back. I don't have all the faith in the world. Magic's a good friend of mine, so I wouldn't be saying this for nothing, but he is a good battler, and I just think he's been having an unfortunate season with a poor team, honestly. It's not necessarily that his battling has been that poor, it's that he's had really bad matchups every single week because of the way that he drafted his team. He does have a ton of hazards on his team that we haven't been seeing him make a ton of use of. And honestly, a spinner on this team would have been fantastic. He does have 4 defoggers instead of any spinners, and he hasn't been utilizing his hazards as much as I would have liked to see him use when he's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different hazard options between 5 Pokemon. So we'll see if he can step up the game there. Ben is next, and the Tampa Bay Weasels. Ben's been having a fantastic season, and unfortunately took an upset loss to Daniel and the Seattle Raptors. Otherwise, I could have very well seen him go on a 12-0 tear and win the regular season, or finish first in the regular season, 12-0. I think that would have been entirely possible. He could have broken the record from season 1. At this stage, now that he's experienced that loss, we know that he's not undefeatable, and I do think that he's going to take a few more losses to end out the season potentially. He does have to play Phil in week 11. I think that he's got a tough time there. He has to play Austin in week 8, week 9, which could be really difficult, and Jed in week 8, which also could be really difficult. Although on the other side of things, he has a reasonably easy matchup against Jay in week 7 and a reasonably easy matchup against Nacho in week 10. He does have to rematch Matt and the Green Bay Pods in week 12, which was his closest game up to this point, so that could be very dangerous as well. He has made 1 transaction this season, dropping Pinsir, 2, but he dropped Pinsir for the Kecleon, and he dropped Sceptile, or he traded Sceptile for a Selgor to the Seattle Raptors. So that was a pretty solid gave himself a little bit more of a hazard option besides Crocodile just bringing rocks every single week. I think that shoehorns Crocodile, to be completely honest. He hasn't really brought Mesprit to any games. I'm not sure what Mesprit's doing on this team, to be completely honest. It's not really doing a whole lot besides being another knockoff weakness for the team. Not that he has a knockoff weakness, but I just don't see Mesprit doing much for this team. I think his main core of Mega Scizor, Kieran Black, Gengar, Crocodile, Primarina, and Zapdos has been coming to a lot of games, and I think that's basically his main team, so he's probably just going to stay with that. He doesn't need to make any more transactions. It might be nice to see some, though. He was predicting over 500. He's on pace to do that. He just needs to win 2 more games, and he can make that. And doing as well as possible, he's definitely on track to make playoffs. So I think that that's sort of what he means by as well as possible, and I think he can very easily do that. He predicted Kieran Black to be a kill leader and Draco Meteor to be a top move kill. So we'll sort of see how that goes. Um, he didn't play last season, so we have no basis for his last season. In fact, actually, to finish out the roster, we have no basis for last season, so I'm just going to close the season 1 document because neither Jay nor Phil also participated in last season. Jay is 1-5 -11. I'm actually surprised that he even picked up his 1 win over Jed. I think that was a pretty poor matchup, and I really wasn't expecting to see him win any games except maybe his matchup against Magic to finish off the season. He did predict for 3 wins, so we'll see if he can pick up 2 more to finish off the season and get that. He was also aiming for 500. That doesn't really seem realistic at this stage of the game. He predicted Mega Diancie, Cortana, Mega Beedrill, and Weavile to be kill leaders, so we'll see if any of those are up there. And he predicted Return to be a top move kill because of Mega Pinsir. Um, he's had some really bad matchups. He has Ben still, he has Austin still, he has Nacho, which he could win, he has Phil, he has Magic, which he could win, and he has a rematch against Cade as well, which is a really close matchup there. I don't really see Jay making playoffs at this point. He could play spoiler for a few people, especially people like Phil, and actually that's probably about it. He's really realistically played most of the people in his conference already, and he only plays um, Phil from his conference to end out the season. So he might not be able to play spoiler in his own conference, but he could play it in the opposite conference. He's made a few transactions. He dropped Porygon 2 for the Cloyster and Jellicent for the um, Dusclops. I think those are okay drops. Kind of miss what Jellicent did on this team, but I can understand why he didn't want to double up on water potentially. Mega Camerupt, he predicted to get 5 kills. Currently, it has 1. We'll be looking to see Mega Camerupt to come to more games and do more of that. Volbeat has been kind of a sore spot for this team. Everything else has sort of come reasonably consistently, but Volbeat has only come to 1 game. It doesn't do much for this team, to be completely honest with you. Forcing people into Encore against a really slow team doesn't really do much. He also traded Tornadus Therian to Jed in the Adelaide Overheat for Heatran, so now he's actually an under base 100 speed team. He actually averages base 67 speed, and he makes for that in power. Things like Mega Camera, things like Bisharp, things like Haxorus. Clefable has come to a lot of games, and honestly, it did absolutely nothing until his match against Jed, where it picked up 3 kills. So we'll maybe see Clefable come to more to more matches and do more for the team. The only positive Mon in terms of he has 2 positive Mons in terms of kills on his team. Haxorus at +2, Cloyster at +1. That's pretty much all I have to say about Jay's team. Unfortunately, I've been recording this for a really long time, so I actually need to start getting on with the video. Phil, well, it helps that I don't have to go back and look at the season 1, but Phil has been having a really solid season, 4 and 2 +10 already. Conkeldurr is blowing people away. 12 kills is actually the most kills in the league right now. Is Conkeldurr? It doesn't have the highest differential, but it's got the most kills. He predicted playoffs. That is very realistic. I think Phil has a very strong chance at playoffs. He predicted Kieran Black, Excadrill, and Tapu Koko as kill leaders. Excadrill is not. I can tell you right now, Excadrill is not a kill leader. It's a free agent currently. I don't think it's going to be picked up by anybody. It really makes no sense for anyone to take Excadrill at this point, so that's probably not going to pan out. He predicted Earthquake, Scald, Toxic, and Thunderbolt as move kills. Those are all really close to what's actually top move kills. In terms of his last matchups, he has me twice in week 7 and week 12. He has Matt in week 8, which is difficult. Uh, Daniel in week 9, which is going to be a really scary match because Daniel is unpredictable. Jay in week 10, he should absolutely win that. Ben in week 11, that's going to be a really scary match as well for him. So he's got a pretty difficult end to his season, I would say. And we'll sort of see if he can turn that around. and turn it into a 10-2 finish for himself potentially, maybe tying or breaking one of the records if he gets a really high differential. It's likely to me that he can clinch his division reasonably quickly if Daniel falters down the stretch and if Jay keeps picking up losses like he has been this season. He's made 0 transactions so far, and I think he might want to make 1 or 2 personally. Tauros has come to 0 games, and Rotom has come to 1, and I really don't see either of them coming to many of his last matchups, especially the Tauros. Tauros is great on paper, but in reality, it doesn't do enough. And we'll, we might see Phil change up his team. He might just be comfortable enough with it, and that's perfectly fine. But personally, I'm looking to see him change those 2 mons up into something else potentially. They're both tier 5s, so there's not a whole lot of. I mean, it's going to be a niche role anyways, but maybe there's something that he's looking for on his team. He doesn't. Is he missing anything in particular, actually? Dark. He doesn't. Yeah, no, he's got pretty much all of the cores covered. So, maybe he's not looking for anything in particular. He's got a reasonable variety of rockers and stuff like that. Doesn't force Bronzong into rocks every week. Doesn't force Nidoking or Mega Aerodactyl into rocks every week. Maybe a spinner would be nice on his team to not get rid of T-Spikes if he brings T-Spikes. But it's a very balanced, bulky team, and that's sort of just what he's been going for. Um, so then in terms of kill leaders, as of week 6, Melodic is first with 10 kills, and it's got a +9 differential, which is why it's in first. Kinkeldr is in second with 12 kills and a +8 differential. Mega Altaria is in third, or tied for third with 9 kills and a +6 differential, tied with Thundurus with a +6 differential, but Thundurus-Incarnate only has 7 kills. Hawlucha is then tied with Volcanion, and I didn't have the room to put 6 on here, but Hawlucha and Volcanion are tied for fifth with 7 kills, 2 deaths each, both with a +5 differential. So very surprising, honestly. Hawlucha is the only one that anyone predicted, I think, to be in the top kills. Yeah. Nobody predicted Melodic, Kinkeldr, Mega Altaria, or Thundurus-Incarnate, and Jed and Magic both predicted Hawlucha to be kill leaders. So we'll see if that changes. Kieran Black is sitting in 11th right now. Mega Charizard X is 14th. A lot of people picked that. Mega Pinsir, where's Mega Pinsir? Mega Pinsir is like down in 50th right now. So a lot of people picked those things to be kill leaders, and they're not really. I can't remember what else. Como was actually sitting in 9th. That was Daniel's pick. That's up there. Mega Aerodactyl in 10th. That's not bad. I can't exactly remember what else was on the. Oh, Mega Sharpedo was a big one that a lot of people called out. Is in 20th. Tapu Koko was one that people called out. Where's Tapu Koko? Oh my goodness. Tapu Koko is in 96th currently. That's not boding well. That's really not boding well. And Zygarde 50% is another one that people called out, and it's an 147th. It's actually fourth from the bottom. So yeah, I predicted Infernape, and Infernape's 145th, and it's a free agent, so that's not going to happen. Let's be completely realistic there. In terms of move kills, Earthquake's in first with 17 kills. It was actually Ice Beam for the majority of the season, and Earthquake's just overtaken it now. Ice Beam in second, Scald in tied for third with Thunderbolt with 13, and then Flamethrower is actually tied with Moonblast in fifth with 10. Again, I didn't have room for 6 on the screen, so it's pretty bunched up at the top there. Bloom Doom is actually exceeding my expectations. Got 4 kills already this season. That's pretty good. A lot of people predicted Scald, Earthquake, Thunderbolt. No one actually predicted Ice Beam. No one predicted Flamethrower, but Jed, Dom, K, Daniel, and Phil all said Earthquake. Anyone could have said Earthquake, and they could have been on this slide, but people chose to not be normies, like the 5 of them. Two people picked Scald, Nacho, and Phil. That was a really good prediction. Bulky Waters have been showing up this season, and Cade and Phil also said Thunderbolt. Thunderbolt finished in second place. Thunderbolt finished in first place last season, so that was not quite a ballsy prediction, but it was very accurate. So that is going to be it for the mid-season recap. I will definitely do one of these for the end of season as well. Yeah, I'm gonna get off because this is an extremely long video. Hopefully you guys enjoy it. Hopefully you found my insight enlightening, and hopefully you found what I talked about useful. And I will see you guys for weekly recap 7.